All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining for tonight's I-Matched webinar series, Neurosurgery Match. My name is Jun Kim. I'm the founder and CEO of MedSchool Mentor, and I'm honored that all of you are here today with these incredible lineup of incoming neurosurgery residents. So I see this event as more than just a celebration. It's a moment to recognize the grit, the passion, and relentless dedication each of these panelists have shown. As we all know, matching into neurosurgery is not easy. So I hope that this meeting will be very insightful for all of you, and each of you will have an insightful takeaway to support your own journey. And to help kick us off this evening with the wisdom and insight only experience can offer, I want to introduce Dr. Fred Lam, a neurosurgeon scientist at Stanford School of Medicine. I met Dr. Lam at Brigham Neurosurgery, working in the research lab under Dr. Kioka. And knowing Dr. Lam, what really stood out to me about Dr. Lam is not only his clinical and research excellence, but his commitment to shaping the next generation. And that's something we deeply value in MedSchool Mentor. Dr. Lam, we're honored to have you today. Without further ado, everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Fred Lam.
Thanks, John. And I want to congratulate everyone who was able to come to this panel, but also the global experience that matching into a neurosurgery program and any kind of residency program is just such a feat of achievement. So I think you should all give yourself a big clap. I wish you a big welcome into this really exciting field of neurosurgery. I had the honor of being a judge this weekend as part of the Stanford Neuroscience High School Journal Club. And I can tell you, I had no clue what I was doing in high school. And these kids were proposing multi-omics AI machine learning experiments to cure, childhood psychiatry. And I was just like, I definitely went to the wrong high school. But I think this is such it's an amazing time to be in the neurosciences right now, and particularly in neurosurgery because of technology. And I think this platform that Jun and the others in MedSchool Mentor that I've been lucky enough to be involved in is a great platform for really allowing people like you all around the world to have access to the exciting stuff that's going on in neurosurgery, neurology, and the neurosciences. And as a mentorship platform, I have to thank Jun because it was a very chance meeting that I met Jun the first day that I was setting up a very, exclusive benchtop in Dr. Antonio Kioka's lab at the Brigham. And I never, ever thought coming into residency, being a Canadian and not really training in a research heavy program, that I would ever have the chance to have a, coveted lab space at the Harvard Cushing Neuro-Oncology lab. And Jun was my first interaction, and he, I will be very humbled enough to say that I did not publish anything in Dr. Kioka's lab. I did almost zero research because I was at the time a junior attending in a local Boston hospital, and Jun was kind enough to change the media of my cells so I can come in at 11 p.m. to split some cells and try to get some experiments done. Clearly, that was a failed experiment, but nonetheless, it brought me over to the West Coast. And here at Stanford, I'm very honored to be able to start humbly my first steps as a clinical instructor. So your first steps today are going to be many first steps. And I want you all to realize that this is going to be a long but very exciting journey. And I think that this generation going into neurosurgery is very different from my generation that went into neurosurgery. There are so many, I really implore you all to explore all the options that are open to you as a career. And the mentorship experiences that I've had throughout my years cannot be stressed enough. And, I would like to pay homage and tribute to my first mentor who gave me my first opportunity to come to America to start academic neurosurgery, Dr. Michael Groff, who unfortunately met his untimely death with his entire family last weekend. And so mentorship has really been on my mind for the last week because there are opportunities that are given to you by mentors, and you almost always think that you'll have a chance to go back to your mentor and tell them how you've done. And I did not have that opportunity with Dr. Groff, but I want to just end this keynote witnessing session with you all to say, I know you're going to be kind to your patients, but I want to say be kind to yourselves, be kind to your colleagues, be kind to your mentors, and really enjoy this journey. So congratulations to you. And I'll turn it back to Jim.
Thank you so much for that moving keynote talk. And yeah, and we will thank you so much, Dr. Lam, for your time
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
such a
Yeah.
moving message.
Yeah, I'd like to stay and spend more time with y'all, but if you want to reach out, Jen has my email. I'm at Stanford. And any questions or anything I can do to help to make your first steps into this journey more transitionless, then please don't hesitate to reach out. All right. Okay. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Lam. And to kick off our panelist discussion, I want to introduce today's moderators for the panel event. We have Jake here, our Chief Operating Officer, and then Matthews, our Chief Strategy Officer, and Dr. Chandra, who is our Chief Academic Officer.
Hey, thanks for being
And
here.
I'll turn it over to Dr. Chandra now.
Hey guys, well, first of all, thank you to all the panelists who have willingly participated on a Monday night. It's a very exciting time. You've all matched, you made it to the other side. I've met many of you during the interviews, and I'm very happy to see you've done well. Today, the whole purpose of this is, and I know some of you have already sat in different webinars, we just want to have an interactive session. I want you guys to talk about your story briefly, what brought you to neurosurgery, just a brief summary about yourself. And then we have some questions that we already, our guests already put in the form. So we'll start asking questions and we can go just in a circle and just try to answer those. For those who are attending, who are not panelists, feel free to ask questions to us and we can bring them up for our panelists to answer. From there, I'm going to hand it off to Jake, who's going to start the session.
Hello, everyone. Just want to thank every one of our panelists for being here today, and congratulations on matching. And if we would like to just kick it off with a brief introduction, so give your name and kind of what brought you into neurosurgery, where you're going. So who would like to start first? I know Shaylin, so I can call it Shaylin.
Hi everyone, my name is Shalin. I'm a MS4 from McGovern Medical School in Houston. So initially, I'd say my path to neurosurgery was very logical. Before coming to medical school, I was very invested in the neurosciences and initially considered a career in neurology because that's all that I'd been exposed to prior to medical school. However, after starting and finally being exposed to the neurosurgical side and having some pretty amazing mentors at my home program, I realized that what I really craved was just being at the forefront of medical and technological advancement and really being able to provide definitive treatments for patients. And that's really what set my journey. And for next year, I matched at Houston Methodist, so I'll be staying in town.
I can go ahead and go next. So, hi everyone, my name is Megan Bowman. So I'm currently a fourth-year medical student at Mayo. I matched at WashU. I participated in the couples match as well. My husband applied ENT, so we're both going to WashU. And to give you a little bit about like my background into neurosurgery, so it was actually a personal connection for me. My father, he unfortunately passed away from glioblastoma when I was a teenager, so that got me a little bit exposed to neurosurgery. As I was doing graduate school work, I started to look at different research that was being done for glioblastoma specifically, and was in awe of how many neurosurgeon scientists were working towards trying to cure GBM. And so that got me interested in it going into medical school, interested in neurosurgery specifically. Started to shadow neurosurgery, participate in research. I tried to, consider other specialties, other surgical specialties, but just kept being drawn back to neurosurgery. I just really appreciate the delicacy of the central nervous system. I think that extra level of cognizance when performing the surgeries that you see very particularly in neurosurgery, and then kind of tying it back to the whole research component, hopefully being able to make a difference from that research perspective in future patients' lives.
I can go next. Hey everyone, my name is Dheeraj. I'm current fourth year at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. My journey into neurosurgery was, I guess, a bit of a surprise to me. Also, I was actually interested in neurocrit care coming in, and I had the opportunity to shadow a neurosurgeon when I was shadowing a neurocrit surgeon or a neurointensivist, and kind of seeing surgery for the first time and seeing neurosurgery. That's where my interest really started, and kind of experiencing more of the operating room. It's kind of a gradual progression into surgery. And at the end of my M2 year, that's when I decided truly to like pursue this. And so here we are now.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Pooja. I'm a fourth year med student at UT Southwestern, and I matched at Emory. My journey to neurosurgery, I think, started early. My brother has epilepsy and a rare neurological condition. So growing up, I was always interested in what's going on in the brain. Ended up majoring in neuroscience in college. And so when I came into medical school, the brain was something that fascinated me. But ultimately, once I saw what neurosurgery was, which wasn't really until medical school, I realized it was kind of combining my passions and interest in the brain with my love for using my hands, because I'm someone who's an artist as well.
I can go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Hannah Black. I am a fourth year med student at the University of North Carolina, and I matched at Brigham and Women's. My journey to neurosurgery, I think, took some surprising turns. I grew up thinking I would be a novelist and wrote a book that was about, in retrospect, brain-computer interfaces, which was fortunate enough to win a Young Writers Contest and get published. And I thought that would be my path. But through kind of a series of events in college, I found, writers are very distant from the people that they impact. And so that led me to pivot to more impact-centered work, which led me to medicine. And then I made it to med school, was very fortunate to get connected with mentors and discover neurosurgery, which I think is the real life embodiment of everything that fascinated me as a kid. It is very exciting. It's very full circle, and I'm happy to be here today.
Hello, everyone. I can go next. My name is Andrea. I am an international medical graduate, originally from Mexico. So right now I'm doing a research fellowship at UT Houston, and I'm at the University of Louisville, Kentucky. And I think like what brought me to neurosurgery was just like during med school, I was rotating through different specialties like we all do. And I just found it like it was where I was happy, and I like didn't mind the hours of being there in the OR or like studying about that. I just really enjoyed it, and I always wanted to do something like professionally with my life that I enjoy, because I think I'm going to spend most of my life doing that. So I wanted to do something that I actually made me happy. And I did try some other specialties, because since I wanted to come here as an IMG, I knew that neurosurgery was going to be tough. So I really tried to love internal medicine, but just it was not for me. So yeah. So I just put the work that you have to, as we all did, and we made it through and we matched. So yeah, very happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Rohit. I am a medical student at Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine. I matched at the University of Pittsburgh. I got into I got into neurosurgery pretty late into my medical school career, around my second year. Um, I just saw that neurosurgical patients tend to be far more acute than other specialties, and as a result, the treatments involved to address their disease were so much more fascinating, in my opinion. So that's how I was drawn to it, and here I am. Thanks for having us.
Hey everyone, my name is Michelo. I'm a fourth year at the University of Florida. I matched neurosurgery at the University of Pennsylvania in Philly. Neurosurgery for me was fairly personal also. My mother passed away from glioblastoma early on in medical school, and that is the initial, I think, driving force behind my interest in the field. Got some exposure to it, shadowed like other aspects of the field. I think the nature in terms of research and innovation. I enjoyed spine, I enjoyed vascular, I enjoyed the other operations technically from a technical perspective. And so for me, I really cemented it towards the middle of my third year, and I tried to like other things, like some other people on the panel, but nothing really drew me back like neurosurgery did. And so ultimately I knew I had to pursue it.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I am a fourth year at USC for med school, and I matched at Barrow in Phoenix. I, like many others on here, probably studied neuroscience as an undergrad and really, really liked the brain and the nervous system and thought it was the most exciting organ system. And then in the first year of med school, anatomy was like my favorite part, doing the dissection. So I knew I wanted to do surgery, something with my hands. And I really, really loved the neuro exam. I think coming from more of a humanities background as well, I like that it is representative of all of our cognitive functions. But I also knew that I wanted to take care of the patient and affect the disease process start to finish. So I wanted to do like surgery rather than neurology.
Hi
Hey
everyone.
everyone, yeah, good.
Sorry about that. But I'm Katie. I'm a fourth year at the University of Arizona in Tucson. I went into medical school knowing that I wanted to do surgery. I just wasn't sure what kind. I was originally leaning towards trauma. We do our neuroscience block pretty early on in medical school, and one of the neurosurgeons had done a lecture, and I thought it was super interesting, so I reached out to him. He had me come out and shadow, and I spent a lot of time shadowing, and I realized that if I couldn't stay away, that it was probably the field for me. So that's how I ended up in neurosurgery, and I'm going to rush next year.
Everyone, my name is Adim. I'm currently a postdoc at UCSF working on glioma research. I graduated from TCU in Fort Worth, their med school there. I would say my journey into neurosurgery was inspired by my brother. He was born with spina bifida. I kind of witnessed and helped him along his path and still do to this day. Over time, I kind of found a very strong interest in brain tumor research and fell in love with the way that neurosurgery combines a lot of innovative um, aspects of research and direct clinical exposure. That's brought me here today. I'm going to be at UNC next year, or in a month rather.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I believe that should be everyone. I'll just start off with some questions. One of the first ones I wanted to ask was for the younger medical students, so MS1s and MS2s, would be, what are your tips early on in medical school for getting into the career of neurosurgery? Any tips for networking with neurosurgeons or kind of getting involved? Like, what would be your advice for that? Anyone who wants to go can answer.
I guess I can go first again. So I guess tips for networking early in medical school. I'd say the first thing is getting hooked in with your home program by reaching out to residents and faculty. I think it's super important to find mentors as early as possible that can really guide you through the process. Other ways to do that is you can start attending grand rounds and M&M to show initiative. I think it's also beneficial to see if your school has a neurosurgery interest group just to get advice from students that have already matched or in the process of applying right now. And lastly, I'd just say get involved with research early and attend conferences when possible, just to meet faculty and residents from across the country.
Just to add to that excellent advice, speaking from the perspective of someone who did not have a home program, I think looking for, if you don't have a home program, or even if you do, looking for a group like Shaylin recommended, to kind of get integrated with. Sometimes it can be tempting to try and get involved with many mentors and many projects. But in my experience, I found that saying yes to a lot of things at the very start is a good way to go about things. And then eventually find your way to a very strong mentor-mentee relationship. I think that's probably the most important thing to do. A lot of emails, don't give up. A lot of people say no. A lot of people won't respond. Just keep doing it. You can be annoying. I think you're allowed. You're given permission to do that.
I agree. I think that's great advice. It can be hard and intimidating because I think a lot of neurosurgeons don't answer their emails unless you send the email 3 times, even for folks with a home program. So don't be afraid to be a little bit polite but persistent. Um, and I will say the thing that is perhaps the unsaid is your rule number one is you got to do good at your own medical school and make sure you're understanding the material at hand so that you can pass step 1 and then do well in your clinical clerkships when the time comes. And then all of these other things are pretty much research and going to conferences. Those are ways that you connect with the faculty and learn about the field. It's a small field, it has a unique culture. Those are the ways you get to know it, but don't neglect your own medical school journey in the process. It is important to learn the skills to be a good doctor.
And I think I just want to add another thing is you need to experience the operating room. You need to see surgeries as an M1 and M2 and really see if this is what you want it to be. You know, I think starting in my class especially, I think there were approximately 10 people that were really interested in neurosurgery, and at the end only four of us applied. And so I think be true to yourself. You know, neurosurgery is not for everyone, and I think the best thing you can do for yourself is to realize that it's not for you. And so definitely go to the operating room, go to, you know, as many cases as you can, not neglecting your schoolwork. And, you know, if you have a home program, spending, you know, 12 hours on call with the on-call resident, those are all things that you can really do to like see what neurosurgery is about.
I agree with everything everyone said. I actually just heard a good talk about mentorship in neurosurgery, and something that someone said that was really profound to me was, you know, try to identify mentors from all phases in their career. People who are closer to you, maybe like a year ahead of you or 2 years, because they would have very close, intimate knowledge of the process and what it's like. Someone possibly like mid-career, you know, a junior faculty member who can invest in you, and maybe even someone higher up like a chair of a department, whether you're home or another adopted department, that can really provide some strong advocacy as you go through the field. And so I think every different type of mentor can offer different things. You can have those that are more career based, those that are more research based, just for advice or venting in terms of the process. But I think all phases are important.
The only thing that I'll kind of like add amongst all this other great advice that's been shared is that like what we're talking about is kind of the culmination of 4 years or maybe a little bit less of working on that. And I know like there's this big long checklist that everybody says like you got to get all this stuff done before applying. But like especially if you're in the M1, M2 stage, like it's kind of like baby steps. So just like starting off by like shadowing a couple of people, I find that like really just showing up, showing your face there. Also in clinic as well. That's an opportunity for a really good one-on-one time. Starting off with a little bit of research, but don't necessarily feel like you have to get like your whole list of mentors by the end of your first year, and then you know all your publications by the end of your first and second year. Like these things will start and they'll accumulate as you work towards it. So just kind of like identifying those couple of areas, still being able to balance your schoolwork, like Hannah said, and then just giving it time, letting your mentorship network grow, letting your publications grow, and then just keep working at it.
Yeah, just to echo what both Hannah and Megan have said, don't neglect like things outside of both medical school and neurosurgery. Your first couple of years of medical school, or at least preclinical time, will probably be the least busy that you are for like the rest of a long period of time. So really capitalize on that and nurture all of your interests outside of the hospital and medicine and neurosurgery, because people are going to want to talk to you about that when you start the application process and when you go on rotations. So really important to be a well-rounded medical student and just kind of follow any interest that you have, not just neurosurgical ones.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I have a burning question that I'm sure is burning for a lot of applicants. When I applied, step one was the gold standard. In fact, I took step two well after my interviews or into my interview season. With the change now happening with step one being passed, in your experience, how important is step two, and what advice would you give to all these medical students right now who have not taken step two?
That is such a good question. That's hard to answer from, I think, our side of the podium. I'd be curious what resident perspectives are who vet the applications. The advice I was given was do as well as humanly possible because it's probably used as a filtering threshold. I will say I felt really proud of my step two score, and I actually don't think it ever came up. So no one ever brought it up to me, but maybe it's used in mysterious ways prior to the interview or when interviews, I suppose, are being allocated.
I want to kind of echo that. I was also told, to do as well as I could, but to look at what the average was the year before for applicants and try and be at or above that. But as Hannah said, nobody brought up my step two score. And I don't think that it would have been a popular talking point. I feel like it is something maybe that's a filtering tool, like you said. But it definitely did not come up. I had people talk about my clerkship grades before they talked about my step two score. So I feel like that's something that may be more important than just getting, a 270 or whatever on step two.
Some schools have access to Texas Star, and we were grateful enough to have it. And when I looked, there was people that match with the 240 and people that match with the 270. So there's such a huge range. And like everyone else said, it's hard from our perspective right now. I think once we're residents, maybe we're more privy to a little bit more details. But I think, you should aim to do as well as you can. And I think, a really good step score isn't going to do much, but a really bad step score may hurt you with the application filter, how people filter stuff. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I agree with most of everything that's been said so far. I really think that from our place on the podium, it's very kind of hard to say how step two is really looked at this point. However, with more and more med schools switching to true pass fail throughout med school, it may become more important in the future.
Just to take a stab at kind of like the second part of the question, like advice for step two. So at least what I found was like really helpful is just trying to like take in as much as you can during your third year rotations. Oh, sorry, that's the can in the background. Take as much as you can during your third year rotations. Really study hard for that because step two is basically the culmination of your third year rotations. And so like really studying hard for those shells, making sure that you really understand that content. And then I think that like it's really kind of transitioning from like, oh, do you know like the pathophysiology behind this to do you understand the treatment? And can you go through like the different treatment algorithms and knowing where the treatment algorithms diverge from one another? So kind of like just studying up those things, using the resources that the NBME has. And then of course there's a lot of other things that you can do, but I would just kind of say that those are my two high yield things, is doing like taking third year really seriously, studying a lot, and then using lots of NBME resources and kind of with that clinical mindset about actually treating patients.
Just to add to that, the academic portion of step two, I would recommend taking it as close as possible to your clerkships, especially if you're considering a research year. I actually took mine after my research year, which made the learning curve for all that material significantly steeper than it would have been if I had done it immediately after my rotations. If you just take 6 weeks, if you can, to find the time to do it before a research year, if you're planning to do one, I think that would help a lot. That's just from my experience.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Now, next question I wanted to ask, I guess for the M4s coming up and the M3s right now, what would be your advice for away rotations and really separating yourself from the others and basically being as much of how would you go about the away rotation to benefit your applications best?
I think the key to performing well on any rotation, but especially your away rotations, which obviously hold a little bit more weight than maybe some of your other clinical rotations, is attitude. Knowledge will be impressive, but having a good attitude and being a team player and being kind of a yes man and showing up and willing to stay for very long hours will take you so much further than any like question answered correctly in the OR in any setting. So just being friendly and excited to be there will take you very, very far.
I would echo what Sarah said. Knowledge is obviously good, but from what I heard about my rec letters, they mainly talked about, me being a team player or someone that people want to be around. So I think putting your best foot forward, trying to learn the anatomy or whatever the case may be is important, but just having a good attitude and being someone that the residents and faculty want to be around is really important. Neurosurgery is one of those fields where you're with your co-residents for hours on end for long, long weeks. So more than how much you know, people are going to be gauging you as a co-resident, as in like, do they want to be around you? Can they work with you? Are you a team player? Will you pick up where they lack, etc. So I think attitude and just being personable goes a really long way.
Just to follow up to that, how did you guys geographically pick your sub-Is? What was your strategy for that?
I always given the advice to see as many different places as possible, types of programs, and in as broad of a region as possible, if you aren't looking to specifically live near family in a specific region. So I rotated in Colorado and Boston. My home program is in North Carolina. They were all different sizes. They were all different styles of programs, so single site versus multi-site. And I would all say they have kind of different strengths. I think it is Sub-Is is one of the most unique and fantastic opportunities to actually learn what's out there, and programs are quite different. And I think it's valuable to see what kind of a heavy, high volume place is like, what a super academic place is like, what a smaller program is like. Programs are different. People love them all for different reasons. And pursuing as much geographic and program type diversity, I think, is really an asset. If you don't know what you want, which was my case.
Just to add to that, I would also say that you'll get asked on your interviews why you chose to rotate where you rotated. So be prepared to have an answer for that if it's for whatever reason, geographic or whatever reason you choose to rotate at those specific places.
Just
So-
to piggyback, sorry, go ahead.
All right, go ahead.
Just to piggyback off of Hannah and Nadim's points, diversity of the program as far as like whether it's academic, community, and then also geographical. I think tying back to the first question about how to do well on these sub-Is, you have to take that diversity into account. And most importantly, I think you have to focus on your fit for those programs. And part of being a sub-I, I've noticed, is being like a chameleon and fitting into these different programs. Different programs have different expectations. Some might be hardcore, and you just gotta do everything, not complain. I mean that I think is applies for everything, but some are more laid back, and if you come off as too hardcore to them, you're not fitting in, and they won't like you. So it's important to have some situational awareness and really get a feel for what the culture is like, and then kind of change your attitude to fit in.
I think that's an excellent point. I think that to add to that, very excellent advice is that if you just take a breath or just a small break at the very start of your sub-I, like a day or two, without having to put too much pressure on yourself, or for that matter, the residents around you, really observe, take in what's going around you. This is just kind of what I learned to do personally. And just see how the residents interact with each other, find your place, figure out how you can help out, and then put yourself there. And I think that'll be really useful to do exactly what Rohit recommended, is just to just kind of find your fit and figure out what the program's feel is like.
I will.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I will also add, if you are planning on doing a research year or a fellowship, I think it's a reasonable expectation to sub-I where you did your research fellowship. So I would consider that as one of your 3 if you do plan on doing that.
Following Ankush's question and Michelot answering, I want to ask you guys, you that did a research here, what did you have in mind when reaching out to a place, or which strategy do you think it's important to have when choosing a place for a research year?
I think the most important thing is not specifically the location or the institution where you're doing it, but the PI that you're going to be working under, the mentor, essentially. What is their track record? How many fellows have they had in the past, and how many of them have matched? Where are these fellows going? Where are they coming from? I think that's the most important thing, because that gives you insight into what kind of training that you're getting, the kind of connections that mentor has. So yeah, I'd say that's step number one.
I agree with Roy. That's actually a really good point. I do think there has to be some if you're pursuing a research year, I do think that, and I know it's kind of hard given today's competitive climate, but I do think you should be pursuing something that you're genuinely interested in. So for me, that was neuro-oncology, and I knew I wanted to spend some dedicated time doing, immunotherapy work and learning more about that and developing that skill set. And so I sought out places and opportunities where they had that track record, and specifically asked to be in labs that had a strong history of that. And so I think if you are interested in spine or vascular, I think I think using the year to develop a niche in neurosurgery, something that you can be almost like a mini expert on, can be very valuable going into the application process and your career in general.
Yeah, I'm an IMG, so and I know Andrea did a research here, so I wanted to get her insight, how she was able to navigate as an IMG.
So yeah, it's a little bit different as an IMG. I guess you don't have like as many connections established before, especially if you haven't done like an official sub-I here in the US. So for me, it was more like just being persistent, keep sending emails. I was following a lot of neurosurgeons that were doing research, and I just kept like emailing them to see if they had any opportunities for me to come. And also you have like the things about the visa sponsorship. So it's not as easy as just like, oh yeah, come do research with me. But at the end, it's just like keep sending emails. Most of them are not going to reply, and that's something that you have to be okay with. But then for me, my PI, he was actually new. He just like finished his own fellowship like very recently, and he was moving to UT. So he did not have any record of matching anyone, or like he was new at this. And I just met with him, and I feel like it's like right now as matching with a program, I just feel like I matched with him. Like my research interests like match with his, and what he wanted to do with his research lab, it was very interesting for me. And I was like, okay, if I'm gonna spend a few years, because it was like 2.5 years that I did, I better like enjoy what I'll be doing. So I came here to Houston with him. And yeah, the beginning was a bit hard because we were both starting in a new institution. We were both trying to figure things out. But I think it helped that I had a established research background for my med school. So that helped us a lot to get our projects going on. And at the end, what I think helped me a lot during my research year is that we had a lot of collaborations with different institutions, with different neurosurgeons. So the things that you get to publish, the things that you get to present are like more than just like a single center, which a lot of like high impact journals appreciate. And at the end, it was just, I really enjoyed it. I used to shadow my PI during clinic. So that was also like an opportunity. If we saw something interesting, then we were like, okay, let's do something about it, or let's go check the patient data that we have. And you also get to collaborate with the residents and with med students. So yeah, I think as an IMG, I would just say keep sending emails and just work hard, work really hard. And you have to be able to do the whole thing. Like for the publication, you have to be able to give the idea and to do the statistical analysis, to do the writing, to do all of it. And I think that's gonna help you a lot.
Thank you so much for that one.
Andrea, sorry, Jake.
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
I wanted to ask you, Andrea, as an IMG, myself, I'm representing here the IMGs. What would make an IMG look competitive to you in the match application?
I think there's not like a single formula, and I've talked with so many IMGs that were able to match before, and I think we all had different paths. And of course, the publications are important. They are, because they are like something that opens you like doors to different institutions or to different programs, because they see like, oh, this person has 30 or more publications. That's amazing. So let's check the application. But at the end, you reach to one point that if you have 30 or you have 50 or you have 100, it's not going to change anything, because it's not just about the numbers, it's also like the quality of your work, because you can go and publish like, I don't know, 50 projects that are not meaningful, and it's just like for the sake of publishing. And all the program directors and everyone can tell that. Everyone can tell if it was just like for the sake of publishing something else, or if it was because it was something that really mattered to you. So I feel like it's important to never lose that, because it can be very easy just to want to publish more and more and more. And the reality is that at the end, it's not going to change anything. I don't think that having 30 publications is going to change. It's going to give less opportunity for someone that has 50 or someone that has 15. I don't think that's gonna change that much. Of course, it's important, and I would encourage everyone, like med students or IMGs, to get involved in research. And also because neurosurgery is like continuously changing, so it also helps you to be like up to date with everything. And I think something pretty important is the connections. Your letters of recommendation are going to be very important, because it's going to be someone that is willing to like make a phone call for you, is willing to say like, hey, like match this one because I know it's good. I know that it's going to work hard, because that really, I think that's one of the most important things for us as IMGs.
And I actually have a quick follow-up question, since we were kind of talking about research. I get this question a lot. In matching into neurosurgery, there's many different research you can do. You can be basic science, it can be translational, it can be clinical. What did you do, and what do you think is the most helpful for matching into neurosurgery?
All my research has been clinical. I've never done any basic research. I don't think there's one that is better than the other one. The reality is just that basic research takes a lot of time. So you can take 2 or 3 years to get one publication, but it might be the publication that gets to Nature or to the New England Journal of Medicine. So instead of doing like 10 that are gonna go to another to other journals. So I think it's more like find what you like. If it's basic research, go ahead. I never really enjoyed basic research, so I like more clinical research. But I don't think there's like a specific one that you should do.
Anyone can answer this question as well.
I would echo that. As a first-year medical student, I was very, very nervous because I had never done any sort of bench research, and I thought that neurosurgery being so like caring so much about research meant I needed to do basic science and needed to know how to pipette and do all of those things. And I shadowed in a lab thinking I was going to spend time doing that, and I did not like being in the lab setting. So all of my research has been clinical, and I don't think it matters at all. Clinical research is just as valuable, and when you get into residency, a lot of what you're experiencing in a day-to-day as a resident will lend itself more to clinical research anyway. And it shouldn't make a difference. What matters is that you like what you're doing. To echo what Andrea said, like just do research in anything that you're really interested in so that you can talk about it.
I agree with what both the previous panelist said, I also did clinical research. I actually worked in a bench lab or bench research in undergrad, and I absolutely hated it going into medical school. I knew I was going to stick with clinical, and like others said, have something that you're proud of and something that you can talk about for a really long time. Especially if, the other person is also interested. I think when, at least in interviews, when they're asking about research and what research you did, it's kind of an open-ended question. So you get to dictate what research you want to talk about. And you should be able to talk about that research very freely. And, a lot of times these people just want to know that you're passionate about what you were doing. And so that's, you have to be passionate about the research you've conducted.
Just to add kind of like a similar but different perspective, I did a lot of clinical research, but then I also did anatomical cadaveric dissection, which is a little bit more unique in terms of research. And again, like on the interview trail, no one necessarily cared about like, what the they cared about like what the research was, but mostly it was more about like how you talked about it, like what experiences did you learn from it, and then also too just like showing that passion. So I think that any sort of research that you can do is good, regardless of whether it's like basic science, translational, clinical. It's just more about like, what are you actually getting from it? Like, what are the skills that you're getting? And then how are you able to talk about them on the interview as well?
To echo everyone's point, yes, I did some clinical work, but I think more substantially was my basic science work and research. And I think, like everyone said, it's how you speak about it, how passionate you are about it, and how you see yourself, I think, moving forward with whatever interest or research that you're doing. And so I found that I connected with a lot of people who are particularly interested in neuro-oncology research and ideas that I had to continue that work in residency and how I wanted to build on it and stuff. And so I think that's an important point to just keep in mind.
Just to add to some of the excellent advice everyone has mentioned, and to go back to the research here, I think that if you're kind of on the, and this is to also answer Isha's question a little bit more, who messaged me in the chat, but I think when you're deciding whether or not to do research here and kind of where you want to do research here, if at all, I think it really depends on what you want to get out of the research here. If you're just trying to do research and just get publications for the purpose of making your application stronger, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that's what a lot of people do, and I think that's an acceptable thing to do. Or are you trying to learn more about neurosurgery? Are you trying to learn more about a specific field? Are you trying to get exposure to academic neurosurgery? I personally decided to do research here because I wanted to go into academic neurosurgery, specifically oncology. And so I decided to start doing brain tumor research, which was going to be very challenging to do from where I was. But I got a lot more out of my research here than I anticipated, which was connections, being a part of a large academic neurosurgery program, interacting with residents on a daily basis, interacting with attendings on a daily basis. And I also developed my own interests in specific research areas. I started exploring and developing my own skills. It was honestly extremely valuable. Those are just some things I would say keep in mind when you're deciding if you want to do research here, where you want to do research here, and for what reason.
Thank you so much for those amazing answers. I wanted to ask another question for all we had this kind of pop up a bit, for all the individuals who don't have a home program. How did you go about getting mentorship and finding opportunities?
I don't know if I'm the only one that applied without a home program. Am I?
No,
I guess I
me
am.
too.
No, we got Roy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, if someone else wants to go for it, please do.
No, go ahead.
Okay. What I did is I knew I wanted to do neurosurgery walking into med school, so I immediately started emailing. I was physically close to UT Southwestern, so I emailed a lot of the faculty there, the residents there. I got in touch with them. I started doing pretty much anything they'd let me do. I came in with some ideas of things that I wanted to work on, but I used neurosurgery research at that time during my first and second year. As a way to, one, connect with faculty members and residents, to learn neurosurgery because you don't learn anything about neurosurgery besides maybe about subdurals in medical school, and epidurals, sorry. And so I used that aspect, the research, to kind of get integrated um, within an academic program. I emailed and talked to a lot of the private practitioners in my area. I went to the hospital with them. I spent any time outside of being my assigned clinical hours to whatever specialty I was rotating with a neurosurgeon on call and trauma call. I spent time in the hospital on the weekend, really just trying to get as much exposure to the field as possible.
My story was similar to Nadim's. My program, obviously, without having a neurosurgery residency, they weren't very academic either. So it was mostly just a lot of cold emailing attendings. I reached out to attendings at my program, and they put me in touch with other people who may or may not have had research. And then, eventually I was kind of pushed towards my current mentor, and I decided I'd do a research year with them. It's honestly just a bunch of cold emailing, bunch of cold calling, conferences, shaking hands. I don't. There's no easy way about it.
And then to kind of, I guess, wrap it all up would be a question to everyone. What would you do differently in your time in medical school, if there is anything specific that you can think of?
I guess one thing I would have done differently earlier on is just seeing what a successful applicant looked like at the beginning of med school. When looking at charting outcomes for the first time as an MS3, preparing a strong application is infinitely more difficult than starting as an MS1 or MS2, kind of knowing the things that you have to do in order to match neurosurgery. I think just having those additional years can go a really long way in terms of knowing the grades and scores you need, expanding your research output, and even developing meaningful connections that will allow for stronger letters.
I agree with that. I spent a lot of time, and I would say almost stress, in the first couple years thinking, I really want to do neurosurgery. What does that actually take? And I spent time asking attendings, which I actually felt a little bit frustrating because they were so far from the process that it was hard for them to give actionable feedback for a granular kind of what should I do this semester versus next semester of medical school question I was asking. And what I started to do later that I wished I'd just done sooner was asking the students, any student from my school who had matched neurosurgery in the last couple of years. They were much more, familiar with my institution, and they could also give granular advice because they remembered it better. So I totally agree with what the previous panelist said, and I would encourage you to seek that information from students because attendings, I think they're just often too far from the process. They can give good advice, but if you're looking for specific advice, that's where I encourage you to turn.
Before ending, I think this meeting, I wanted to ask you, following Dr. Lam amazing speech at our opening, do some of you have a story or something to share about the role that mentorship play in your journey to matching neurosurgery?
I guess I can talk about this. In a lot of my interviews, I told the interviewer that, I am a product of strong mentorship, and it's kind of made me want to be a mentor myself for future generations. And I think, for me, especially, I started on the neurosurgery train a little later. So basically at the end of M2 is when I really met with a neurosurgery attending for the first time and was like, hey, like, um, I have X, Y, Z in my application. I really need X, this amount of research within the next year. I really don't plan on taking a gap year. And so having that conversation with an attending is very important, and kind of setting your expectations and, telling them this is what you need, and kind of them understanding what you need and helping you along the way. I think that's really important. And I used to have bi-weekly, almost monthly meetings with my attending mentor, kind of just checking in on the progress of a lot of our research. And so I think holding yourself accountable is very important. And I think you kind of pick up what good mentorship looks like. I've had bad mentors in the past, and I think, once you realize the impact they've had on your life, of course thank them like every single time you see them, because I wouldn't be here without my mentor. And so you have to appreciate what they do for you and kind of take that forward and kind of make change your own way, right? Everyone is in different stages. I don't know if Ankush is still here, but I would ask Ankush a lot of questions during the process as well. And now here I am, talking to you guys, and I don't feel qualified enough to give you guys, any advice, but I think everyone has something they offer, and you just pick and choose and kind of go from there.
I feel like we all have many mentors on our journey. And something else I want to add is when I heard people talk about mentorship early in medical school or early in the journey, I was always like, man, like there's nobody who's checking in with me all the time, like kind of faculty initiated early on. And I really was like often frustrated by this. And the turning point, and I think in developing those really strong relationships for me, was to take it almost entirely into my own hands. Like I was leading the mentor-mentee relationship by being a really good mentee. And I think that's not something that we're taught, but the advice that was given to me that I'll pass along to you all is there's a chapter in Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, which is like kind of specifically geared towards women, but there's a specific chapter on what it looks like to be a good active mentee that solicits support from mentors. And it's a really excellent starting point if you're struggling to build those relationships, and it gives you some action steps that you can take to reach out and solicit mentorship.
The only thing that I would kind of like add to all these really great points about mentorship is like looking for the diversity of mentors as well. So not necessarily thinking that like I need to find a single mentor that like fits everything and can answer every single aspect, but like kind of like evaluating like what things are important for you, like what things you have like questions about, and then finding those specific individuals that can answer those different questions that you have, like whether that's about neurosurgery, if it's about like aspects outside of medical school, like kind of work-life balance, just like understanding that it's more about like kind of a mentorship network that you're trying to build rather than just having that one specific mentor.
We are almost out of time. We're only 2 minutes away. I want to respect all of our time. I know everyone's time is very valuable. So thank you so much, everyone, all the panelists, Dr. Lam, who's not here anymore, and all the moderators and all the attendees who joined us tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, the panelists, for sharing your stories with such a passion and honesty and heart. I think if there's one thing that all of us can take away is that path to neurosurgery isn't linear, and that it isn't walked alone. It's built through resilience and community, and most importantly, a close mentor who can guide you. And thank you so much, everyone. I'll end the meeting here.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.